I'm General Solomon.
Alright, so I was inspired to make this deck after nearly losing a game when I let my guard down and I seeded a missile and someone was just spamming ion cannons at my base. And after a recent change to the outer ring ion cannon damage, the base damage that the ion cannon does increased to about 20%, no matter where you target it on the base. So I thought I could leverage this. The surprise factor is there, and it works kind of on the same principle as the Jade deck. Win that first missile, and as long as you win that first missile, you can just nuke the enemy base down. So there are two win conditions here. We can flip the pad at the last second, and you use the ion cannon just before the missile fires to gain control of the pads, launch the nuke, or you can just zerg down the opponent's base after winning the first nuke, or even the second nuke, depending on how aggressive your opponent's deck is. If you win the first missile, you can sometimes transition into double harvester, and then you're able to just mindlessly spam those ion cannons. It doesn't always work. It depends on how aggressive your opponent is. The primary weakness of this deck is being spammed down by aggressive units and losing control of your Tiberium field. Unfortunately, the deck does not have like a lasting core, so eventually the fragile units can be overrun if you're not able to gain control of the game early on. So this deck stays cheap by spamming dogs first. You open up with the dogs, they're very versatile. They answer most barracks openings, and then you can switch to whatever you need to answer accordingly. So if your opponent goes heavy into the air, you can go pitbull plus talon. If they continue to spam barracks and go heavy on the lasers, you can go ahead and switch to rifles, and then even with the dogs, just stay so cheap, you can fill in your weaknesses with JJT, pitbull. The JJT is pretty good for answering tanks early on because of their high cost. They're just not able to be very tempo oriented for the first missile, and then you use the pitbull to clean up like chuggies, bikes, wheels, and what have you. The shatter is in the deck primarily to answer tier 2 type infantry. So if you see heavy flame spam, like lots of flamers coming out, or shocks, or if you see a Chem Warrior coming for your base, it's really good to just spawn it right before that Chem Warrior can get into range. It stops it dead. Or you can use it to counter Marauder type decks or Grenadier type decks. Finally, it's pretty decent against zone troopers and cyborgs. You don't generally build it, but it may be okay to build in certain circumstances. You just have to judge it accordingly. The Talon is also good as a Hail Mary. Let's say your opponent is countering the core of your deck with just anti-vehicle, anti-infantry type units, but they don't really have anything that can target up. You can use the Talon tech switch to send that Talon over to their base and get that final ion cannon off, do a little bit more damage to their base, and win. The Talon is also good against like Borka, Inferno, Basilisk, Kodiak, but you can't expect to win the long game with Talon against those types of decks because they generally run heavy anti-air. So bear in mind, this probably isn't the best deck list. It's what I've found to work. I like that it stays cheap, but as more people play it, let's say it becomes more popular, some people think it's overpowered. Some people might find a better combination of units to run, or they'll find something that is more consistent, and we could see the deck evolve from there. Alright, what is going on, you all? I'm bringing you a new deck. Today it's going to be a Solomon base kill slash pad win deck. It's a 2 win condition deck, so it's pretty flexible. If you don't feel like you can attack the base because the opponent is defending pretty well, you can still kind of pressure the pads and win that way. Or, particularly against tech players, you can push up into their base and just get a base kill after the first missile. It works very similar to the Jade deck. It's a little bit more, it's a little bit less flexible, I'd say, overall, just because non-units are generally cheaper, and you're kind of committing really hard with the ion cannon. So if the ion cannon doesn't work out, if you're not getting extra collateral kills from like a unit being spawned by your opponent, or if you're not able to win the first missile, or you're not able to continually pressure the base, you're going to have a really hard time winning the game by just using the ion to kill the base. It's just so expensive. I'm not entirely sure if the deck is overpowered yet, but my leanings are that it is probably a bit overtuned, just because it does encourage that type of playstyle where you sit back and you're encouraged to not contest the pads, but rather save up enough money and run a few units forward to the base and finish it off. What I'm showing you here are my games from the crate challenge, and in the crate challenge, I had 10 games, and the first two were pretty sloppy. Admittedly, I'd just woken up and my abilities aren't really that good then, but I was kind of adapting my playstyle as I was going through. I was noticing what was working, what wasn't, and one thing you might notice here is I kind of noticed that the jump jets can be wedged into this corner here behind the rock, and it gives me really good base aggression, and that sets me up to either take the nuke, or because he has to he's pressured so hard now, he's contained to his base to defend, or I can also just try and ion his base down. So, and this is the same problem that Jade kind of presents, right? So once you set up like this, you're guaranteed to win. Like, it doesn't matter that he's won the nuke now, right? I'm just in a position where I can never lose as long as I'm using my resources wisely. And you can see me going back and forth here. I'm kind of just trying to block his flame troops while my main jump jets are doing a lot of pressure up top. And since they're only being challenged by the stealth tank, there's not really a big threat to them. So going into game 2 here, that first game was really sloppy. I really have to admit, it went on a lot longer than I expected, but that's what happens when you're going in cold. It's your first game in a while. So these laser drone openers have grown a little bit more common, I feel. I don't know when that happened, but it's kind of annoying since I'm running dogs, but because they're trying really hard to go after my harvester, they're not able to really capitalize on early pressure, and so I can just pop out a pitbull. Pitbulls chew up laser drones pretty well as long as you're microing in and out and stacking them so your pitbulls outnumber their laser drones. The laser drones are always going to get their fire off, so it's better to reset than not. So you just pop off your shot, run out, pop back in, and start stacking pitbulls, and you come out ahead. So he's going after my harvester here. The missile's about to fire, obviously. I'm going to try and take an advantageous position and flip the missile at the last second. It wasn't as clean as I would have liked, but he can have my harvester, I don't care. The win condition in this deck, remember, is to either take the missile or take the pads. My deck is so cheap, it doesn't really matter if he gets my harvester or not. I could have pushed into the base at this point here, right after. Generally, you want to do that right after you win the nuke. You just run all your units into the enemy base. I was a bit slow and didn't do it, but it's not a big deal. We're pretty much primed still to carry our economic lead. I mean, we're only building cheap units. That's the whole point of the dogs and the rifles. And we're gonna come back into this second missile pretty strong. So I'm playing pretty slowly. I really have to admit, in this game as well. So all my units are kind of going all over the place here, but I use the ion to flip the pad here. I get a 3 kill. It's not economically good, but it is tempo. Like, the tempo of it is really good. It allows me to kind of set up on the pads. So by having all of my pitbulls on the bottom pad here, I'm able to kind of wall off any air units he can throw in. I know he's using laser drones, so it's pretty safe to assume like the bottom pad is secure. So I go ahead and build some jump jets there to kind of soft take the top pad, and they don't have to beat anything on the top pad. They just have to be able to get over and not die. So everything on the top pad was lasers, and nothing countered the jump jets. So it was a really good choice there.
Objective complete.
So this is the ideal opening here. This is why I run dogs and rifles. And against like a typical player, you might see someone play barracks and they'll open like lasers or rifle. The rifles and the missiles will come together and they'll pop off one dog model at a time. So they gradually just went out. But that's okay. All we really care about here is keeping our economy strong while out-tempoing the first missile. So rifles and dogs are very flexible. You can kind of switch. You can just build whatever you want and you won't be at risk of running out of money. And if they're in barracks, you're pretty much guaranteed to win the first missile just because you have that economic advantage to switch to whatever building you want. And they're stuck with laser spam to counter the dogs. That's actually the incorrect way to play, I believe. I think you just go straight to like bites or something possible. Or you just do whatever. But at this point, I'm kind of walled. I'm kind of overextended with my jump jets. I'm not really sure what to do. I try to go underneath the rocks and around. Doesn't work out. So I kind of just take them in, and I see an opportunity here. I wasn't really planning on doing it. To wall my jump jets into his corner here, do a little bit of base damage, and at this point I can pretty much win the game however I want. He's not playing quickly enough to challenge the pads, so we're going to go ahead and just go after the pads here and win, and that's a wrap on that one. So, open up with the dogs again. Seems pretty straightforward, right? We're just keeping our costs down here, and there's not really much they can do. We're not. So this is something I've noticed with the deck. You don't actually have to charge the missile as hard as possible. You just have to win the first missile. So ensure you win the first missile, and then worry about getting it as fast as you can. Like, doesn't matter if you stall the missile, but make sure you are advantaged to take that missile when the time comes. So the reason I didn't push my dogs up here is because he didn't have any vision. So he's pretty much opening his first unit blind, which means I get a huge early game advantage. Because most people don't expect dogs, right? They don't expect dogs. Sometimes they don't even expect wheels for GDI. So by throwing out those dogs there, he commits to Chuggy, and it pretty much guarantees that I'm going to get this first missile because his tempo is going to be so low from having that. So I go in here. I get 2 free kills with the ion. This is an ideal situation. You do 20% base damage. You kill 2 units with the ion cannon, and I've wedged in my 2 pitbulls here to kind of polish off the base, do a little bit extra damage. At this point, he's at 20% health. He's lost. There's nothing he can do. I just have to time like 3 10 cost units and run them in around the same time, and it is almost impossible to deny vision. So this is kind of why I think the strategy is a bit brain dead, just because once you get it going, once you get it started, you really don't have to do much else. It's just go in and win. Going into this game, my dogs pretty much instantly scout this MG squad. Very unfortunate for my opponent. I get a clean kill, and his second unit is dogs, so he doesn't have a harvester. We're very, very much ahead in this game. I'm gonna let my guard down as a result, start making some sloppy plays, but we let this missile squad in, try and focus it down. I built a Shatterer because it's clear this guy is running an MG missile squad variant, so we don't really want to go air or anything. We just want to make sure we are able to cleanly remove his infantry. And Shatterer, while it is a pretty poor unit overall, is incredibly good at removing MG squad. It 2-shots it, even if it's on defense. It's probably one of the most effective units in the game in doing so. This first missile is going to drag on a little bit, but that's good for us because he has no harvester. He's playing a harvesterless MG deck. So our econ's going to ramp up. His econ is going to stay roughly the same unless he decides to go harvester. And I think it's going to be a pretty clean, easy game to take based off that. MG squads decks are pretty unforgiving if you lose your setup, your initial setup, and you're not aggressively charging. Like, the game's dragged on for a minute 30 now, and all we really have to do here is wedge our units in like normal, get a free collateral kill on those missile squads with the ion cannon, and let the Shatter do some decent base damage. He's going to try and push his missile squads in. Shatter is going to stun those missile squads, not take a lot of damage. I'm going to dance my units around here, anticipating an infantry coming out, and get a free kill on that MG squad. And my jump jets are going to clean up this game.
Ion cannon activated. Mission accomplished. New objective available. Harvester ready. Unit ready.
This is one of the harder matchups for me with Ion, or with dogs rather. This is one of the harder matchups for me with dogs. When they make a scavenger, I'm kind of put into a position where I can't aggress his units without giving him money. So we kind of want to deny that as best as possible. I think scavengers are pretty bad actually overall, but they're kind of in a place right now, like if you're playing dogs or if you're playing wheels, particularly laser drones, maybe even drone swarm, they're pretty strong, but otherwise they're pretty bad actually, just because you're unlikely to get that value from them. So I get a little bit extra damage with the Shatterer. That's kind of why it's in the deck. It does decent base damage. It's a decent base counter. It's a decent infantry counter, particularly against Jade. It's one of the bigger threats to my deck, and you really want a cheap, efficient removal for Jade. A lot of people think like a unit must always be buildable in the deck, but it's really just an out in case they have Chem Warriors or something. So against this guy, he's running artillery, and this is going to be a really sweaty game. I noticed my money's a little bit low, so I kind of have to conserve as best I can. I'm kind of trying to draw fire away from my dogs here, so I can get to his base, and he is doing a pretty good job of attacking me. So I decide to just switch to Talon. I know he doesn't have any counter to it. I just have to get vision of his base. He sees this, immediately reacts. I mean, look at that. Both of his artilleries move at the same time. I have to get to his base and Ion. This is pretty much, he does exactly what he needs to do to counter me here. But the Ion does just enough damage. Generally, if you see this type of strategy, you really want to aggress as hard as possible, and that's what you're going to see. It's gonna beat it out. The counterplay isn't obvious, so. Going into this game, we got pretty much an ideal opening. This guy is not familiar with what I'm doing, so I am very economically advantaged here on this first missile. He's just going to spam missiles. I see the next set of missiles, so I go ahead and make my rifles and send them in. And I'm not charging particularly well here, but the snipers basically poised me to come out ahead here. I just need to make some dogs, which I won't do. I'm stubborn. I go ahead and make the Shatter. It's not a bad choice, just because he's shown that he has a lot of expensive infantry. I don't know why I made two. I think I was just on drugs at this point. I should probably make jump jets, which I do. and try to block, fail to do that. He has to move in. I moved the wrong unit because I'm mismicroing here. I'm a little bit nervous, I think, at this point because I just really want to get this perfect 10-0, you know. Move my shatter and my jump jets in to do early base damage. Remember, this is not necessarily the most known strat. I'm going to go ahead and put my shatter in the back so he can't really do anything to it. And I've already got him down to 20% base health. So you can see here, I've pretty much won the game. There's nothing he can do at this point. And he's going to try and aggress my harvester. I should be making dogs and rifles. So I kind of just cluster my units together as best I can. Notice my ion is not quite ready yet, so I kind of wait a little bit. I kind of notice it, I'll wait a bit. And then I start running in. He has to block here. He kind of fails, drops the ball to do it. He starts realizing it. But I get in, do the ion, and it's a GG right there. So interestingly enough, I end up facing this guy again, and he knows this time, so this is why it's kind of relevant, and I decided to play a few mind games with him. He knows I'm going to open dogs, so I'm pretty sure he's a competent enough player to at least recognize that. So he opens missile first, so I open the rifles, and we're already pretty far ahead. If I was thinking, I would have been like maybe thinking that he was going to make a sniper next and just pushed aggressively in, but fortunately he didn't, so he goes into the rifles, pushes into my concave. We're pretty far ahead here, and I try to push him back. He pulls back, and we do this dance. And normally you want to push in aggressively if you think he's going to come in. He wisely uses his missiles to block, so I can't really push into his snipers anymore. And I kind of pop cap myself here, and end up losing the first missile. So I'm in pretty dire straits at this point. I don't think I'm going to be able to ion base kill him, and I know he knows the strategy already, so I decide against doing that around this point in the match. It may still be the better choice, but it's definitely not going to be easy to pull off. So we're going to try and be more aggressive with our unit building and get good counters and just try and come out economically ahead. So I'm trying to move my dogs out of the way here so my shatter can do a little bit of work with these rifles and move my jump jets back in, and try to move my dogs aggressively to deal with these snipers. I still need to be building. I feel like I need some more jump jets, but I probably should have made a pitbull there just to kind of like vary up my army, you know? 'Cause he's got the sniper still, and I'm not aggressing him quite enough yet. We got plenty of money. That's the main conceit of this deck. I make a pitbull just to stay kind of versatile in my units, and it's working out for me, I think. So I realize I can just pitbull spam at this point because he doesn't have anything that answers it directly. He's got a bunch of garbage units, and I think he's pretty happy to lose them. So you take that missile pretty comfortably because he's pop capped on a bunch of garbage units. Wasn't necessarily intentional. I try to push up here and go into the base because I've been thinking about it. You know, I need to immediately attack this base right after I take the missile. Realize it's not going to happen. The missile starts charging. I still think I might be able to do it because it hasn't charged yet, but around this point, this is when I commit, and I'm saying I'm not going to be able to aggress his base. He's just blocking way too hard. Like, I mean, you can see he's left the missiles there at the top, and I decide, you know what, I'm just going to win the missile, because on a 2-pad map, it's much easier to get good value out of the ion. They have to concentrate their units around one or 2 pads. So your ion's almost always going to get some good value here, and it can sometimes work as a surprise. By flooding the pads here, it's kind of hard for me to get in and do work. So we're just trying to set up as best we can here. Remove this talon. That's the #1 priority. Clean up the bottom pad just to flip it. And now I have control of the top and bottom. His orca isn't going to reload. He's going to build 3 units here to try and contest me. And he realizes the brilliance of that play. Maybe we'll give strong armor promotion, eh? So this next game, gonna open up dogs like normal. We see the flamers. Honestly, this is why I think flamers kind of need a buff. They are not a good early game unit. So buffing them isn't going to really impact their early game potential. I like the speed buff just because it makes them more able to contest things. But with the dog spam, I'm pretty much guaranteed to win this. And I decide just to go Shatter. He spent all of his money at this point to build a bunch of infantry. And if I'm smart, I'm realizing this guy does not have a harvester. So as long as I can just hold back these units, I don't even have to charge a missile. I'm in pretty good shape to win this game here. My dogs are going to do pretty well against the flamers. Could move my Shatter to the top and try and deal with it. I think I moved my dog up here just to get rid of it. Mind you, the dog plus, or dog loses to flames plus missiles. The chip damage is just enough. So we're going to try and push into his base here. I use the dogs as fodder to take missile shots while I get my Shatter into position so I can do some damage. I'm pretty sure he doesn't have a harvester yet. I mistarget the Ion because I want to try and get some extra kills based off of him spamming some units to spawn. Doesn't quite work out. Get some Shatter base damage going. Make a pitbull. I'm out of money. I think he should have just left his missiles on my harvester. But he realizes that now. I'm not sure if I should defend my harvester, and I think spending money here is kind of bad. So, especially buying another pitbull might have been a mistake. But I am able to clean up these laser drones. He's not going to get a kill on my harv, and it's going to put me in pretty good position to win the nuke. So he's now down. He's now down several laser drones. Hasn't secured a kill on my harvester. He's going to have to commit again if he wants to. I've already got the counters out, and it doesn't even matter because all I have to do is scout the base here and I win. I don't know if I'm BMing here or not, but I should really Ion his base and just win. Okay, I think I realized it there.
Ion cannon activated. Unit lost. Enemy base destroyed.
Okay, and this next game, we're just gonna open dogs again. I'm pretty sure around this point I've just decided that dogs are the way to go. So we see the rifles. It's exactly what we want to see from an opener. That means we're pretty much in position to have the stronger economy when we have to switch buildings. As long as we're aggressively using our units to attack. So something I've been thinking about here, I think double dog plus pitbull attacking bikes actually does enough damage to kill the bikes. So I make the Shatter here to kind of take care of these scavengers. He's going to get a lot of money, unfortunately. Look at that, he made 30 Tiberium. He's already paid off his scavengers. This is why I don't like facing scavengers with dogs. A good player is, mixing up their units, and they're able to get enough kills on these cheap squad units, particularly the dogs, to to make their money back pretty aggressively. You don't have to rely on a Kim buggy or anything like that. So I'm gonna go ahead and lose my pitbull there. Pull up some jump jets. If he has a Kim buggy, we're in trouble, but I don't think he does. I'm gonna go ahead and make a pitbull to defend my harvester, just to lower the damage on it. And I'm gonna pop cap him here on these bikes so I can do some more base damage. Move my pitbull in. I know I've won at this point. There's just not much you can do when your base is at this low health. Like, you have to play so scared that it's pretty much impossible to come back. Mix of scavengers, but it's too late.
Objective complete.
Pretty easy 10-0 overall. Go ahead and leave what you guys think down below in the comments about the deck. Is it too strong? Does it need a nerf? Is it just right? Like, it may actually be in that sweet spot, right? The costs are maybe just high enough for like an aggressive player can kind of shut you down and keep you from performing the combo. That's going to do it for this video, boys. I will catch you on the flip side. Take it easy. This is your own boy, signing off. Peace.